I ended up hearing some pine needles rustle, like a stick break, and I turned around and just was pretty bummed out to see a mountain lion chasing after me. So I stopped and I threw my hands up in the air and I started shouting, and unfortunately the shouts didn't deter it, so it just kind of kept running and lunged at me. It was going toward my face, so I threw up my hands to kind of block my face, at which point it grabbed onto my hand and wrist, and from there it started to claw at my face and neck, and that's when kind of my fear response turned into more of a fight response, because I realized how close it was getting to my eyes, and it got a claw on my lip, and I tried to throw it off me at that point, and then we took a little tumble down the south side of the trail, and down there just kind of had a little wrestling match, at which point I was able to get on top of it, pin its back legs so I didn't get any soft tissue scratched out in my nether regions. And at that point I was grabbing around for sticks. I only had my left hand free. My right hand was still locked in its jaws. Tried to get at its neck to see if I could stab it in the neck to get it to release. That wasn't working. The sticks were breaking. So then I picked up a rock that I had seen kind of near us. It was pretty heavy and it was kind of hard to wield, and I tried to give it a few bashes in the back of the head, but fortunately I just kind of had a tough time swinging it with my arm still locked into the cat's jaws. Really wasn't working too well. At that point I knew with two pretty good blows to the back of the head that it didn't release, that I was probably going to have to do something a little more drastic, and then I was able to kind of shift my weight and get a foot on its neck. And at that point I stepped on its neck with my right foot, and just slowly after a few minutes I thought I'd be getting close, and then it'd start thrashing again, and had a few more scratches that resulted from those thrashes at that point. And I'd say another couple minutes later it finally stopped moving, and then jaws opened and I was able to kind of scramble back up the hill and get the heck out of Dodge. I was actually kind of surprised about the silence of it. There really wasn't any growls that I was hearing. I didn't hear like any sort of cat noises that I would normally associate with a wild cat. The smells, I don't really remember the smells. I remember looking down and seeing the claws like retracting and then coming out of its paws, and was just really looking at those because that's whenever the front paws were just kind of thrashing when I was on top of it. So it was really pretty visually intense, and I don't really remember that many smells per se. There was a certain point where I kind of just imagined being stuck on this hillside and eventually just having a cat gnaw at me, which is a creepy way to go. But for the most part, the adrenaline just kind of kept kicking back in those moments. One of my big fears throughout the whole thing was another cat coming along, because it was a younger cat and I could tell that it wasn't fully grown, and I was just very concerned that Mom was going to come out of nowhere, and at that point that fight would be over pretty quickly. At one point I just remember feeling jolts in my nerves and my fingers, just because one of the cat's tooth was inside the kind of meat of my palm, and I just felt it kind of hitting that nerve over and over again. So these two fingers were just kind of a little bit electric. And then it was grinding like after I hit it in the head with the rock, it started grinding its teeth back and forth, and I could hear kind of ligaments and tendons shifting around in there, and that it hurt, but I also remember the sound of that was pretty disturbing. I was like, well, there goes all loss of function in my fingers, but luckily it's not the case. I will never be able to live up to the reputation, and maybe that's what has led to some of my reticence for actually coming out, because I don't know, the story is bigger than my puny form. So yeah.
What do you think Chuck Norris would think?
Oh man, Chuck would have come out without a scratch. You know him. And he'd probably have the tiger slung over his shoulders too.
Do you have any background in martial arts or wrestling or anything like that?
Zero. Yeah. I feel like the only actual martial arts experience I have is I sometimes do the insanity workout tapes. And he does like the power jabs at the end.
Are they paying you to say that?
Pardon?
Are they paying you to say
Yeah,
that?
yeah. You're welcome, Shanti.
Speaking of some stats, how old are you? How tall are you? How much do you weigh?
I'm 31. I'm 5'10", and I weigh about 150, 155 pounds.
How many cats do you have?
One.
Are you getting rid of it?
No. Yeah. So far he's been a real sweetheart. I feel like he knows that something's up, so he's been extra nice to me and has kept his claws in the paws.
Any plans to write like a survival guide or maybe like a book or something? You telling me for?
It'd probably just be a pamphlet because it's not very long. After I hit it in the head with a rock and it still didn't release my wrist, that at that point more drastic measures were necessary.
What are your thoughts on the cat in that one? Is it a life-threatening experience with you taking out the cat?
I do. I mean, not in any sort of form of regret, but it's one of those just really unfortunate situations where we're both in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Have you got any good nicknames from this?
I guess King of the North. I just heard that one. That's about it.
Criminal Tumblr?
That's a new one.
Is it weird to have everyone kind of know about your story and everyone wanting to know who's behind that story?
Yeah, it is weird. That's about all I have to say about that.
Are you a dog person now?
Yeah, I'm always a dog person.
What have you learned about yourself?
Oh, man. That's the toughest question of the day. I guess really that in kind of those really tough, scary situations, that if you kind of stay a little bit calm, which I luckily feel like I'm pretty okay at, if you stay pretty calm, hopefully you can use that to your advantage a little bit and get yourself out of a sticky situation.